Yo, what up, everyone? It's Tuna, Ellie, and Grim back for Blastcast, dude. It's been a little while, but yeah, we're back, and we're really excited to talk about the new expansion and the new reveal that happened today. This is literally an hour after we all sort of like had a time to digest all the information and looked at everything, so we're everything's still fresh in our minds, and we're excited about everything. We really like, really excited to talk about everything as well, and how we liked and experienced the reveal. So yeah, what up, boys?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick us off. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is, of course, the two new Eldritch Horrors, the Eater of Worlds and the Exarch, which are, pretty crazy. We didn't expect to get two new bosses. I personally was expecting like four Guardians and a new boss, but, we got two of them. And they kind of do operate a little bit differently than the traditional kind of like Conquerors or like Elder Guardians and stuff like that. It's kind of like you can pursue Maven, the Eater, or the Exarch, whichever kind of different vertical you want to go down at any sort of different point. And they each have their own rewards and crafting currencies and all sorts of things associated with them. So, do you guys like this shake-up to the different bossing metas? Like, do you think it's like kind of refreshing? And I guess in general, what do you think?
I love it, especially that we don't have to actually do Cyrus, and we can like save it in fragments and just sell it off like other bosses. I think that was the best change, that you choose like what you want to do
Yeah, I really like that too.
and only do that content. What I
So,
don't like is that they're forcing us to kill every boss before we can use sextants. I feel like they should allow us to use the sealed sextants on the map device without the
not quite,
watchstone,
not
so
quite.
that the
As
early game is not as
so,
bad.
we'll get to it, but in order to acquire the new watch zones, the void zones or whatever they're called, you just need to kill endgame bosses. So yeah, I guess you supposedly do need to kill an endgame boss, but you don't have to complete the full atlas to get there. You could in
However,
theory get a carry.
one good thing
True, true.
on the other hand is that you start unlocking favorite maps uh, before completing your atlas, which is huge in my opinion.
Yeah,
Because
that's a good.
because like even when you get into the atlas like early on, I don't know how early on you'll be able to unlock the favorite maps yet. I know they did show like some boss kills here and there, but there's so many of them that like potentially you might be able to unlock favorite maps like relatively early, right? In your progression. So imagine like if you just get into the atlas and you somehow manage to get like a favorite map or two even slots, it'll really help you with like, say you want to farm porcupine cards, you can like do that without really, completely having to finish your atlas first, which by that point usually it's pointless, right? And like you're getting into farm and you already have an overabundance of maps when you have fully completed 117 atlas.
Okay, it kind of leads me into another question. Like, so in a league start situation, obviously we've got these different branching paths we can go down now in these stories. It kind of leads to an interesting question though. So with the Maven, for example, right now she's kind of like this mandatory hurdle that you need to like kind of engage with and get your Atlas passives to kind of like get some of your strategies going and online, and then eventually, way down the road, you do these big end game invitations. At the start of the Atlas, there's not really a whole lot of reason, apart from some new Atlas passive points that you can pick up, which, are kind of inconsequential in the long term, to really do the Maven at all. Like, why would you want to witness these different, bosses when you could just, kind of get engaged with some of the new bosses, get more monsters in your maps and stuff like that? Do you guys think Maven's kind of a bit weird and she's kind of a bit out of place in the early game?
Yeah, especially since they changed the loot table of Cyrus, they removed the awakened gems completely from Cyrus, right? And they added to Maven. I feel like Maven is like something like you just farm a little bit late game. You don't really care about it early.
I'm definitely
Yeah,
not gonna
there's not
be
really.
interacting with it now because the reason why I was interacting with it in the current 317 Atlas, because if I get into Hamlet, I want to unlock the passives as soon as possible so that while I'm progressing towards my next zone and getting the 3 additional watchstones that I need from that zone, right? Then I'm gonna be able to like farm essences at the same time, or get like additional chance for harvest. But without that now, since it's strictly just um, map completion based, right? Your progression, then there's gonna be no point whatsoever to doing Maven until later on if you choose to farm it. But that's also one thing that I think is great is that it's now become
can
more of
save
a
them.
yeah, you could save them, but it's also become like more of a choice, right? So it's more of like you have like three new totally sort of like separate avenues of endgame farming. You can be like, I want to focus on the Maven side and do that stuff and get, still get the invitations and all that stuff, witness the bosses and whatnot. Um, which is not something that I like because I don't particularly like doing like different maps every time, right? Whereas if you're doing the other bosses, then it's more about like they're gonna witness your map, which then progresses you towards the boss. So you don't have to necessarily be doing variety mapping to progress on that aspect of things. So it gives like, because I even heard from Darky that he's like, I really like the variety mapping aspect to it, but like for me, I hate it. So um, it's nice that like we sort of get to have the best of both worlds in that regard.
Maybe it'll
think
be a
that
little bit less restrictive as well. Sorry, Ellie. Because you have the
No
whole
worries.
entire atlas to pick the 10 maps from instead of just single areas. So you can kind of do your 10 favorite over and over again. But yeah, go ahead, Ellie.
I think it's better for like casual players because they get their like their points and easier and earlier than they would, because most of the times like most casual players wouldn't be able to do most invitations, or they would just get carries, right? Now they can get them anyway. And yeah, I think it's just better for casual players overall.
I think it's just better for everyone, honestly, because we get to get into the content that we like doing way
Yeah, and
earlier
also
and with way less restrictions.
you're not hard locked into playing a really strong boss killer early. You get your progression even if you play a mapper.
What you guys think on the whole like bossing versus mapping kind of side of things.
Or can you say
But
that
I'd like
again?
to hear what you guys think about the actual change to the actual influence mechanic and how you kind of progress your way to the boss and kind of the different spice they've thrown in as well. So obviously when you encounter the two new bosses, you can choose one or the other. And as you run them, you actually seemingly get guaranteed influence monsters in every map. I don't know if that's the way you guys interpreted it, but you kind of click the button and then it's got that influence. So it's kind of almost like running an Elder Scarab on every map while also progressing a Conqueror.
But it gets progressively harder every time you complete a zone successfully. I think that's
Yeah,
how
more
I
and more.
found it as well. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. More
That
baseline
seems,
juice is what we asked for when we talked to Chris, right? And we're getting it. So,
it seems pretty busted, though, you reckon? Like, that's a lot of monsters.
well, busted relative to now, but it'll become the new baseline.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And they also added in the spice of having I think they called them altars, Eldritch altars, which as you kill monsters they spawn,
Yeah.
and obviously the further on in progression you are, the more you get, and you can choose either to buff the boss or buff the map in terms of the loot you're getting. So the examples were shown were 8% map quant and +1 Eldritch currency from the boss. So what do you guys think of that? That's like kind of leading into what I was talking about before, where like before the stream we were having a bit of a chat about it. You're kind of insane if you're not constantly running one or the other of these Eldritch Horrors, right?
Yep.
Because I mean, I'm sure Ellie can tell us just how good map quantity is. If you're picking up 5 or 6
Yep.
of these altars, like that's like 30% or 40% map quantity. Like that's crazy, isn't it, Ellie?
It's so good.
Yeah, map quantity is insane. This league, like everyone was magic finding. Like we magic find with Tuna. I don't know if you guys saw the clip. There were like walls of loot. Like Tuna made a clip. There was like a wall of loot when he turned off the filter. So if you get a lot of quant, the maps become crazy profitable.
But also, one thing to note is if people are looking to get into MFing maybe in the upcoming league, I'd like to stress
It can
how
make it a lot
insane
hard.
300% quantity is.
Yep.
And not having 300% quantity from Scourge is gonna be a huge sort of wake up call.
I think there might be some substitutes, but we can get to that later when we talk about the Atlas passive tree from what they've been talking about. But yeah, so the general gameplay loop seems to be that, you get into these maps after your initial progression and you're in farm mode and you want to do these big end game bosses. It seems like they're insanely rewarding for mappers, and the actual boss keys themselves to both the Black Star and Infinite Hunger, which is the mini boss versions, as well as to the big boys, are both tradable and rollable. Meaning if you're a speed mapper, like a bow build, or like a Winter Orb, you can literally just speed clear these maps, scoop up all of the benefits of like the altars and the increased amount of monsters and the kind of residual drops, and then just sell the keys to bosses, which is pretty damn crazy and something that we hadn't had for like 2 years, or pretty much ever actually. Or maybe with Guardian maps we had it in Elder Guardian maps, but outside of that, what do you guys reckon of that?
It's what we've been asking for since this new Alice, right? Pretty much. Since we've always been sort of feeling like we're forced into bossing and you're missing out, and also like having like a trade economy and then being forced into not like being kind of like pigeonholed into not being able to trade and feeling bad for it. I think overall, obviously that goes into sort of like player behavior. Like I know you shouldn't feel bad for it because there's obviously a opportunity cost and all this stuff like always comes into mind for us since we're like trade oriented players. But yeah, I mean, this is just great. Just being able to provide a service for people that do want to boss constantly, and also for people that do want to boss constantly, they can also do that. So they can build a niche build that's specifically good at a boss, especially also with the modifiers now that might make you stronger against a specific boss, right? That they've added to the items. So let's say like if you wanted to farm one specific boss, you could just keep buying that boss and gear your character towards just focusing on like that boss specifically, which I think is cool as well. So yeah.
Also, this can help SSF players as well. Maybe their character is not strong enough to do the bosses at that time. They can just save them and do them later, right? Or like make another character and save them for the other character. I feel like when you do content and you just waste the resource that you get from the content, it feels terrible. But like if you can save it and do it later, it's so much better. It makes like you have a sense of progression that you're like, instead of getting hard stuck on some content, you're like, well, I'll just save it and do it later when I can. So I think it just is better for everyone.
Yeah, I think one of the things which might, be a little bit of a downer for some players is, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it, Ellie, is the actual farming of the keys, the tradable keys, is only possible in T14 plus maps after your initial loop through the kind of the objectives. So this, like with how rewarding these things are, with all of the altars and all of the keys and tradable and all sorts of stuff like that, I imagine these keys are probably going to go for 1 to 2 exalts, maybe even more per key. The meta around farming low tier maps seems pretty much, dead, right? I mean, I wouldn't imagine a world in which you wouldn't be running T14 plus to try and take advantage of this mechanic.
Yeah, I think so. They're trying to push like a progression that eventually you get to all T16 maps, right? With the 4 Voidstones. So I think that I don't think they want people to run low tier maps, or if they want, they need to like they need to have like a really specific reason.
Yeah,
like maybe they magic find so they can't run as hard of content, and they just do lower tiers. But I think the T16s is the way to go.
Yeah, it's pretty massive opportunity cost to give up like all that influence and stuff like that. All right. Well, I think obviously, what do you guys think? Do you all like the new influence system, the kind of like the combat side of things, and obviously then look at the new bosses? We'll just quickly touch on the uniques as well. I mean, it's pretty crazy that the amulet and the staff that were both revealed, which are pretty high power level, are both just boss drops off of the bosses themselves. What do you think of that? These are like heavy hitters, which are coming from like bosses which everyone's going to be able to farm and trade the keys to. Do you think that's pretty exciting?
Definitely, yeah. Like bosses haven't really had like stuff worth farming for a while, and most of the like the way that you access bosses as well has been relatively annoying. With the amount of trading that you need to do to get like 4 fragments to then be doing the boss, and most of the time it's like sort of a gamble, right? Which I guess like early league it's obviously not, but like once everyone's progressed past that, it sort of starts becoming less and less profitable in regards to doing like Uber Elder or whatever. But like in terms of like doing stuff like Shaper, right? That is always profitable because people don't like it. But I think these uniques,
it's
if
also
they
for
have
the time,
the time investment as well, true. But if they have like a well-tuned drop rate, right? Like aka like pretty rare, like very rare actually, then it could be very good because you can like luck out on them, and as long as there's sort of like continuous rewards that you get as you're fighting them, which is gonna be these orbs, right? That are consumable, so they're basically just a currency sink, right? That you're gonna be able to sell. that's probably going to be your cash cow. I think it's just good. Like I think it's a good loot structure to have.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of elaborate a little bit more on Tuna's saying. So the endgame bosses have like 3 different categories of items that they can drop. They can drop the uniques, which I'm assuming you'll get 1 per kill. They can drop the ichors or the embers, which are basically the primary way to access the new modifier pools, which everyone's probably going to be using, you know, probably 40, 50 of them to roll their item, minimum of each influence type, I would say, depending on how big the mod pool is, but I imagine it's going to be pretty damn big. And then they also have the new meta crafting mod currencies, which are incredibly powerful, as well as drop options. So, you know, that already paints a picture of a boss which is pretty much able to be farmed infinitely without any issue of deflation or anything like that of its items. The demand's pretty much going to be insatiable for the whole league, with maybe the exception of some of the lower performing unique items. Does that sound about right, Ellie?
Yeah. The thing that about the icors, that not only you need to spam them at the end when you're done with the item, but you need to spam them during the craft, because the currency interacts with whichever influence is dominant, so that during the craft you can like block prefixes or block suffixes during the craft. So you're gonna spam so many of those, like making an item is gonna be crazy.
I think they're going to be very
Gonna be a lot.
common.
Well, that actually leads me to my next point, which I'm actually quite curious to hear both of your opinions on, is the fact that these things are rollable just like the Feared. And there was a whole economy around people who could, you know, do Alkvald Feared and, you know, get so much more juice out of the materials. Is there now just like kind of this crazy meta of like boss killers who are going to be able to kill these bosses, you know, Alkvald with crazy mods and just get way more out of them and just get rich? Because there's just so much good stuff from these bosses. We haven't even talked about the new Chase unique or the Watcher's Eye-esque unique. Like even with like we'll get into that in a second here. But do you think that maybe like rollable, like does that open up a new avenue of play?
Yeah, it's sort of like kind of like how inscribed ultimatums were in a way, right? Except without much risk, because I suppose the risk is that you'd like brick the boss fight and you get nothing. But I think it's good because it really pushes people to improve their builds and stuff. The only problem with this is obviously in true Path of Exile fashion, the easiest way to tackle hard content is just to get a support. But if you don't like that, I mean just play SSF, I suppose. But I mean, like, you know, we can't really complain about groups because that's essentially when you're playing in an open trade league where people can group, then you should expect people to be able to group. So just the way it is. And I think supports are sort of already in a spot where I wouldn't say they're balanced, but it's relatively high opportunity cost. So
it's reasonable. What do you guys think about that new unique item? The one which requires 2 gems, which are super specific and super tailored towards your build. Do you guys, I mean, I honestly, I can't see anyone outside of the super mega rich ever assembling any of these which are actually relevant for their character and build. Or do you guys think it's going to be like Watcher's Eye and, you know, everyone's going to be using one?
I think it's one of the coolest items they've ever made, if you ask me. And I think every build's going to have them. Because and also for the people that do boss, it's gonna be awesome because then it's like a Watcher's Eye. Like imagine you get like, because the way that they looked is one was blue, one was red, right? So that means that like one drops from the red boss and one drops from the blue boss, and then you need to equip 2 of them to be able to get the bonus, right? So that's like double the RNG. But since we're in trade league, all that means that like if that you end up dropping like a Tailwind Ranger one, I would assume that's really good, or like a Profane Bloom, occultist one. That's really good, right? And then what that means also is that you're a witch or an elementalist, and you're playing whatever build on your elementalist, and you can use Profane Bloom, and then you have like explode with Profane Bloom, and that makes use of Shaper of Flame, so you can ignite with that Profane Bloom, or alternatively. You're an occultist and you're using the Black Flame unique, I think is what it's called, right? Which turns all your ignites into chaos damage, and then you take Shaper of Flame. Like it's crazy. Like it allows for just crazy combinations that like are build enabling, not just a % more damage thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like actually build enabling.
There's quite a lot of crazy. You can like bleed explosions and all sorts of stuff like that on Gladiator as well, which is pretty insane. I think overall it's probably one of the more powerful uniques, definitely. But you actually just made me realize there's going to be 2 different bosses that you can farm, the blue or the red, and they have their own drop tables. One of them's, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of an economy around which one's more profitable to farm, and that's going to swing it back in the other direction as well. It's pretty interesting, very interesting.
Hopefully it's balanced. I think it's balanced because of the currencies, and the currencies are going to be the bulk of the drops, right? The currencies as in like the prefix rerolls.
Yeah.
Prefix and suffix.
Implicit. I mean, sorry, implicit.
Implicit, right? Yeah, well, you do need both because everyone's going to want 2 mods on their items. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, with all this talk of crafting, let's get into the crafting because there is a lot to talk about here. So obviously we have the new crafting system revolving completely around implicits. You can essentially have 8 mod items now for the most part. And those last 2 mods, which are on the implicits, are, quite a lot more powerful, but also quite a lot more specific, it seems. Like the example shown on the teaser page is cold dot multi. And then I believe they also had a fire mod on there as well. But it's pretty high power level. I think it's about a T1, like 26% cold dot multi, which is quite a lot. It's looking pretty interesting. However, there is one interesting piece of information here. And that is that Bex has told me that these mods are not really going to overlap at all with Conqueror or Shaper and Elder mods. So, if you want to get that reduced mana reservation, whatever, and you want to get the Frenzy Charge on hit, you could be in a little bit of trouble if you're trying to build a pure, kind of implicit build. So you're probably still going to need to go over to the Conquerors for that. What do you guys think of that? Are you happy with that, or would you prefer everything just be in the new system?
I think
Tuna's having a giggle over there.
Yeah, I just
What happened?
accidentally
Sorry.
moved the window over, and chat's like going F cam. My bad.
No, you just.
Okay.
You can go ahead, Ellie. I answered the last few questions, so.
Okay. Sorry, I lost. Can you repeat like the question really quickly? I was
So
distracted.
basically, not too much overlap between the modifier pool that we know, and the new one.
He said it during the reveal as well, by the way, that they're like an influence on their own, right? So they're treated like an influence on. You can't use it on influenced items, yeah.
Yeah, they're mutually exclusive. But what I'm saying is like the actual modifiers of the new pool of items, like the new guys, they're not going to be anything like what we already have on Conqueror influences. So, for example, no Frenzy Charge on hit, no mana efficiency, no curse on hit, stuff like this.
That's good.
I expect them to be like masteries, kind of, the mods. At least that's what I hope.
Wait, but we saw gloves with the dot multi, right?
Yeah.
Well,
usually on gloves we do get dot multi.
Dot multi, I think, is that dot multi just for gloves, or is it for every slot? Do you think it's exclusive to the slots? Because we're only getting armor, right? Can you get a chest with dot multi on it?
You can.
Not really sure.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I guess like
it's for every slot. Yeah.
Every slot is gonna have different mods, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that when I asked Bex that specific question, like, is there going to be overlap? Because I was kind of particularly curious about, for example, like getting the RMR on your helmet.
Yeah.
She was basically like, no, not too much overlap. So it's kind of like you're going to want some of the new mods, but you're also going to need some of the old faithful mods, like the Conqueror influences and stuff like that. Definitely. So there's kind of almost like this split approach, whether you want to go with the new or the old, and which one you want to kind of have to go and engage with.
Okay, my take on this is that the new currency is mostly going to be used on like normal items, like rare at the start. Is going to be like you get a good item, right, and then you get the implicit, okay, and then later on you're going to like craft with them your item until it's perfect, and then you get the implicit. Like at the start, you just roll. You get a good item to start with good mods, and then you just spam on them until you get a good implicit. And then later on, you use them to craft the items, and then you finish them. I think that's how it's going to be. And it's a completely different crafting process from like the actual influence items that we have now.
I think overall, the crafting process of the new items, the Ember and Ichor, is a lot more simple. It's like much more accessible. It's completely deterministic. You can't ruin your item, and you can do it straight away. And in the end game, obviously, depending on what kind of mods we get access to, it's probably as powerful or more powerful than the actual, previous system that we had already. Would you agree with that, Ellie?
Yeah,
What do you reckon,
yeah,
Tuna? You've always been a fan of deterministic crafting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to go about it. It's nice. When I posted that Twitter reply on their post, that was kind of more of a troll. But I mean, it's a step in the right direction in that regard. The one thing that's like weird is like how are these gonna actually be like opportunity cost wise, like how are these gonna actually fight up or go against actual influence mods? And are
Well,
we gonna
that's
be
what I
able to
was kind
like
of, yeah.
awaken or orb these influences or like what's going
So
on
I
with
can
that?
actually answer a few of those questions. So basically, both of the systems are completely separate. You can't intermix them at all. So there's three systems at play. There's the traditional influence system with all the conquerors, elder, and shaper. There's synthesized items, and there is the new items with the blue goo and the fire. And all those three things, none of them can really mix or anything. You can't mix
Yep.
and match them at all. And all the things that we come to know and love, like the Awakener Orb, the Maven Orb, those all still exist. And they drop in different locations, which we can get into in a few minutes here. But all three of the systems exist, all side by side. So yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of opportunity cost going on.
Doesn't the Maven Orb do something different now?
No, it doesn't.
they
So
just
we'll
changed
talk
the
about
name.
that. Yeah, we'll talk about that quickly. So they are changed the Maven Orb. I got it here in my notes.
It was Domination Orb, I think.
Yeah, so Conquerors of Conquering Exalts drops from Conquerors, Awakener Orb drops from Cirrus, and the new Orb of Domination, which is the Maven Orb, drops off Cirrus, Uber Elder, Elder, and Shaper. And that's confirmed by Bex. So
That's a lot.
yeah, so
That's
you
a
can
lot of
drop it
bosses
off,
where it drops from, yeah.
all of the kind of like invitation side of things for the influence bosses. And it's also worth noting the Conquerors obviously now also have an invitation as well. So there's a whole like subset of like item crafting and all sorts of stuff like that going on over there. And then we have our new stuff. So it is a little bit confusing.
And also another thing is a lot of the influence mods got kind of nerfed because some of the mods that we had before in the influence got added to the main pool of actual mods that you can drop from like random floor rares. So the Maven Orb or like Domination Orb or Dominator Orb
Mm.
or both Dominance is like a little bit weaker now because we don't get like, for example, +2 amulets, or we don't get like, there's a lot of mods that got removed from the pool, so it loses some power.
Yeah, it's gonna be very, very difficult to be getting like those mods, yeah.
For the most part, you should still be able to craft like the Tailwood Elusive Boots exactly the same way
Yeah.
as you have been before, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully there's an alternative to that. Please don't make me craft those again. But what do you guys think about the accessibility of these resources now, though? Because, obviously Awakener Orbs was super available. Like everyone had to kill Cirrus, he was kind of just free. Everyone could get it. Well, now there's a big fat price tag associated with these bosses. You might have to spec into them on the new Atlas passives. And like, there's this big economy around all these Conqueror stuff. And, is it going to be just really, really expensive, do you think?
I mean, since it comes from 4 different bosses and they're like 4 commonly farmed bosses, I don't think it's gonna
That's
be that
just the
expensive.
Maven Orb, though. The actual Awakener Orb is only from Cirrus.
Okay, but now like it's way easier to do Cyrus because if someone wants to farm it, before they had to go like on TFT and buy it, or they had to like if someone couldn't be able to farm Cyrus, you would have to just wait and sell it or just skip it. Now you can just bottle up and sell it to someone, so you can just buy it in bulk. And I think the availability of the actual Cyrus is higher because of it. Maybe
Do you think so? Really? I mean,
you still
everyone was
get it in
getting
your
it.
Atlas, right? By just playing.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's like a chance to drop a
Okay.
Conqueror map, maybe, and then they also come from Kirac every now and then. But I don't know. I was under the assumption that Conqueror items, as well as all the kind of influence-related stuff, would be kind of lower availability. You know how Shaper and Elder items are pretty rare, especially on the first days of the league. especially like high item level based ones.
It's
I
because
was kind
it's
of like
hard
worried.
to it's really hard to like get high item level bases in
We don't really
general.
know.
Because like especially now you're not gonna be able to go to +1 as well. So that's one thing that concerned me like the most with the whole like new mapping thing is how are you actually realistically gonna be getting +1 influence bases? There's no way outside of Cirrus, and if your map gets Cirrus influenced, right? So if he invades,
Can that even happen anymore? I don't even know if
which
that
I
can
don't
happen
even know,
anymore.
right? Exactly. So maybe the Alice passives have like +1, but they didn't really. It just didn't feel like that's what we were gonna get.
I mean, there is probably ways like you could do like strong boxes with plus
Plus levels,
level. There's all sorts of stuff like this. Beyond often, I think it drops like 2 levels higher with the uniques. No, maybe 3 levels.
yeah,
I
that
don't
goes up to 85 though, right?
Abyss unique.
83 level map +2, right?
Yep. Good point. Yeah, I mean delve maybe, but not really sure. Yeah, it definitely makes it quite difficult, a little bit more challenging than it would
Mm.
otherwise be. But yeah,
Most
gonna be
mods are
tough.
85 anyway, right? There's not many 86.
Is it the resistances that are 86?
No, resistance is 84.
Like T1 life on
86
chest.
are only like T1 armor or something, or like on shields or something like
I
that.
mean,
There's like very few mods.
this is more for like early, right? Because later you'll just be conquer slamming stuff anyways.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, actually. But yeah, I think overall it's kind of this weird ecosystem. I'm really interested to see how powerful the Ickles and the Embers are going to be in terms of the mods they can roll. The ones they've shown so far look either niche, but some of them others do look pretty strong. But overall, there is one fact that remains. You can only use the Ickles and Embers on helmets, chests, boots, and gloves, but you can use influence on everything else. I think it's a pretty big deal.
I really
Which
hope
means
they're
that,
competitive, man. If because they have to be competitive for you to actually consider it, and I really hope it's competitive.
Wait, that's
Yeah.
actually a big problem because those 4 items are like some of the main items that you would run influence items on. Like the boots are insane influenced ones, chest as well, helmet and gloves as well. Like those are
True.
like some of the main 4 items. So
Uh-oh.
it's such a huge opportunity cost.
Yeah, there's definitely some concerns here. I could see, like if you could, for example, Ichor or Ember up an amulet with the +2 going over to the amulet, okay, now we're talking. But yeah, with the chest piece and stuff like that, I really hope there's some very powerful options on offer to be able to tempt us away from influence, because wouldn't that be tragic? They're adding all these new bosses in, and then everyone having to go do serious anyway. Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, it doesn't go that way. But I did kind of want to dig a little bit deeper. So obviously, there's the surface level, which is pretty damn easy to get into. Pretty much anyone can slam on some Echoes or Embers and get some pretty cool mods. And then obviously the tier 2 kind of advanced level stuff is getting, what was it called, the Orb of Conflict, to try and get some of those modifiers up from level 4 all the way to 6. But then you have these really crazy, super powerful meta currencies which take advantage of dominating influences and all sorts of stuff like that. Do you guys want to kind of take me through what you guys think of that? Is there going to be some sort of crazy metagame around this stuff? Because, obviously these are on the level of harvest crafts, which from days of old, aren't they?
Okay, what I think is that they balance this around. Basically, the orbs are really, really strong, right? But the mods that you can roll on the items itself is not as good. For example, you have to start with a normal item to craft this, right? And then get to implicits. You're losing so much because it's not an influence. For example, let's say you're crafting some pair of gloves. You can get frenzy, you can get calling strike, you can get +2 strikes, you can get life. If you craft on an item like this, right, on a normal pair of gloves, you can get good suffixes like res, attributes, attack speed, or like whatever you want, and then you can get life, some flat damage, whatever on the prefixes, and then you get to implicits. But you lose like the frenzy, you lose the calling strike, you lose the +2 strikes. This is just an example. You can craft a lot of different gloves.
Hold on, counterpoint. You can roll abyssal sockets on these though, Elesshar.
You technically could even on influenced items, but not really, because it makes the craft too hard.
Yeah. That's
But yeah,
insane, though. But these are
that
easy
would
to
be
roll
insane.
Abyssal Sockets
Yeah,
on, though.
these are easy to roll Abyssal Socket. And now we can get 6 mods
Six
Abyssal
mod,
Socket.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I think there's definitely some potential here for these items to definitely outstrip influence items. I think it goes without saying, though, we're obviously talking about some super endgame stuff here. And in the early
Yep.
game, there's no question that the Ikor and Ember system is
They're really good.
vastly better than
Early
anything influence
mid-game-
ever had to offer.
Early and mid game, I think is like a huge step towards getting good gear before you get like your perfect influence stuff.
You know, I'll be
I
honest
think
with
it's
you.
a really good craft.
I think Path of Exile has way more issues in the early and mid game than it does in late game, and I think it's a step in the right direction in this regard as well. Like, because it seems that like once you have currency, everything's so easy, right? You just you can get everything relatively like with time if you just put the currency into it. But early on is generally when you find like you're really sort of like weighing whether you should be doing something or whether you shouldn't, and this gives you an extra option for that, which also gives like a new avenue to sort of like, because you can think to yourself that like if you get like a good implicit on an item, it's so much easier to work around into your build, if that makes sense, because it's already like it's already pretty good. And all you have to really do is just get some life and res, and it's sweet as, right?
Yeah, also they're separate. We thought about getting a really good item and then rolling the implicit, but you can just do the opposite. You get a really good implicit, maybe on the market or you find it or something, and then you just roll the items with some essences or some fossils or like harvest. And that kind of is the craft. So yeah, I think it's a really good step for early gearing.
With noting that this is like way more synergistic with Harvest than Conquerors are, right? Because you can roll the item to perfection and then actually just slam it with the influence straight up afterwards. So you can get like a really good 6 mod item and then take it to 8 mod.
I have a question, because like you know all the monsters that get added in the new influence maps. What do they drop? Do they drop these items?
Ikor. Yeah, they drop Ikor and Ember.
They drop just the Ikor, yeah, and it's like the tier 1, right? The lowest value of them.
Yeah, so in maps, just in maps, from what I understand, not even in influence maps, you can get the Ikors and Embers, so like the first stage, and then in influence maps, you can get the T3 and T2 ones, off the mini boss and from like mobs and rares and stuff like that, and then the T4 only comes from the bosses. Yeah.
And do you think, or at least do you hope? Well, this is something I hope. I guess I'm projecting here, but I really hope that there's either an Atlas passive or it's already sort of baked into the mechanic that items drop that way. Because if they're implicits, the item is unidentified, and you can filter it too.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I like if it goes either way, I'm not going to be unhappy, but I also wouldn't be like surprised. You know what I mean? Because that's just to kind of like clarify, there is 2 clusters for each of the bosses on the Atlas tree. So I imagine there's probably going to be something in there. And just to kind of like zoom in here, so there is 3 notables, 4 notables for each boss. So there's a pretty high chance there's going to be something along those lines on there, I think, Tuna.
Yeah, I'd really like that. Because you think people might not be inclined to using the Ichor, and they'd sell the Ichor, but there could be like a huge market of like, as I said, like what I was saying to before, like you could just be like, I would like gloves with this implicit, and then you could buy it because people just drop them on ID'd and then just sell them, rather than having to buy all the Ichor and then spamming it. So what I hope is less hideout gaming and more going out to find stuff gaming.
One thing we haven't really talked about is that this if the implicits are like that good, like for example the Dom multi that we saw in that item, it technically is like an 8 mod item, because you can get like 6 good mods and then on top you can get like 2 extra. That's kind of crazy. It's like a double corrupted pair of gloves. I
think it's also worth noting we are starting to see, I don't know if you guys caught it in the patch notes, some of these influence mod kind of kind of things that they solve just randomly pop up like as a mastery. For example, you can now get 10% chance to get a frenzy charge on hit against a marked enemy as a mastery from a marked mastery. Like that's like insane.
Yeah, So
That's
good.
crazy. And it like now maybe you don't need that Redeemer chest if you're playing like in that kind of an area and you can pick up the Mark Mastery. And maybe that means you have an Ichor chest, like Ellie said, an 8 mod Ichor Ember chest, which is completely cracked. I'm not sure.
And this also makes Rogue pretty strong because
so,
it tends to like give you like really good items, base items that we wouldn't use usually because you can get crazy influence stuff. But if we can get 2 mods on top, Rogue might be really pog finally.
well, it's not just that you get 2 mods on top, you get 2 very powerful influence level mods, right? Like that's the kind of thing you're talking about. And you get the option to metacraft like even harder when you do have it as well. I think it's pretty appealing, and I do think it has the potential to beat out influence mods. The only thing I think influence mods are probably going to be better for is to fix big issues in your build, like mana reservation. But outside of that, I think that the Ichor Ember should be way better, in theory. Damn. Okay. I think the last thing to talk about here, though, is that like let's talk about the quivers. So the quivers, they added some brand spanking new quivers, right? But if you use any of these crafting materials, I know you can't use them on quivers, but it overwrites the implicit. So let's say you get a blizzard crown and you Ichor it up. Well, now you don't have a blizzard crown anymore. You got a Pylar energy shield and evasion or whatever. What do you guys think of that?
You can't Ichor it, right? Because it's only on body armor, boots, gloves, and helmet.
Yeah, not the quiver. Sorry, the helmet. Like if you had a blizzard crown.
Yeah. If you just don't run on a blizzard crown, you only use blizzard crown with like influenced mods. You just don't use it for Ichor items, right?
It's opportunity.
You would just use a high armor or evasion or yes base instead, right? Yeah.
Blizzard crowns as well, like indirectly got nerfed, because of not being able to have +1 zone level, so being restricted to item level 84 Blizzard crowns. So you can only really awaken or orb, like a negative res, right? You have to sort of awaken orb into it to have it on that item. So in that regard, it got kind of nerfed. But in the other side, it's like replacing the implicit. I think it's fine. Gives more opportunity cost, and it also makes things like helmets that you might not necessarily want to use, like, because it's not like I'm too excited about losing evasion and armor when I use the Blizzard Crown, but I know that it gives 7.5% more damage, so I'm like, I'll take it, right?
But what Tuna is referring to is that if your item level is not high enough, you can still awaken orb a mod over the item level of your current item on your item. So for example, you made the example of the level 85 -9 res, right? Or awaken -12. You can still put it on your item by using awaken orb, but you can't roll it after that. Like you can only get it one time on awaken orb because your initial item is too low level to roll that mod. So it limits the craft by a lot.
I think that overall the crafting landscape is probably going to be a whole lot more healthy. And just like kind of like as someone who kind of has been entertaining the idea of crafting for profit, I see a lot more opportunity out there, like in the amulet department, without having to focus on influence, which is pretty restrictive in terms of what you can roll. There's a whole lot more things that you can get, like to really like kind of get it going, and it's quite exciting. And there's definitely a lot of big possibilities have been opened up with the new system. So I think crafting is definitely heading in a really good direction. It's way more accessible. It's way more like powerful early on, and it's way more interesting in the end game now, especially if you like kind of interact with all both the conquerors as well as the new system as well.
I think in the really late game, if you're trying to craft like really, really good amulets and quivers, when they do stuff like adding a mod with a low weight to the core pool, it makes the craft really, really hard. I don't know if you ever tried to craft fizz weapons, for example. It's really, really hard to craft a fizz weapon, right? Now we have modifiers with low weight on amulets and quivers, so you're probably gonna have to either fracture or just spam more likely, like until you get up the one arrow. It's really hard, I think.
I mean, okay, so on the amulet side of things, you can use the fossil. We do have the gem fossil, so that's obviously like helpful.
Yes, but still, it's really hard.
Well, we don't know what the
Okay, we don't know the weight. True. If we go by the way that they have right now, it's gonna be really hard to craft because before we could just alteration spam and then awaken orb +2 on the amulet, for example, right? And then you awaken orb +1 and +1, right?
I think this is more of a change to make people pick up stuff rather than
Yeah, now you either find
crafting.
it on the ground or you have to like alteration spam one mod and then you have to imprint into the second one, or you spam faceted fossils, but they're in limited supply and they're really hard to get in Delve, right? You don't get many
Sort
unless
of.
you're super
I
good.
think people don't pick them up as well because they've been relatively useless. But yeah, they're gonna be like quite expensive, like 50C per
Yeah.
reroll. So that's not cheap.
The +2 amulets could be hard to acquire, for sure. We'll have to see what the weights are there. I think overall, though, crafting's going into a better place. Would you both agree with that?
Yeah, definitely on most of the gear pieces, it's a lot better, I think. Also, you're not forced to use, like, for example, amulets now. You're not forced to use a rare one anymore. There's so many more amulet options. There were already a lot of good amulets, but now we have even more, the new amulets. So maybe, even though it's going to be hard to get really, really good rare amulets, you don't really have to always use, you can use uniques now.
You're like, I mean, all the tools vow. That's enough said, right? That's an insane amulet.
Yeah, there's so many amulets that are really good.
Okay, let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about Atlas mapping, something we're all pretty damn passionate about. So first of all, I want to kick it off with the most boring of the things: the return of Watchstones, but in the form of Voidstones. So, do you guys like this change? The ability to basically configure your Atlas to whatever tier you want, and then eventually upgrade it all to T16, but at the steep cost of having to beat the Maven, Uber Elder, the Exarch, and the World Leader to get to that point. Do you think it's good?
Okay, I like the initial concept that we have all the tiers of maps on the Atlas already, right? So that it's like a really smooth progression. You can favorite maps. So this means that if you favorite a map near a map that you need, you're most likely going to drop that map, right? So you can like seize the favorite system to like progress into that direction of the Atlas. And you still get to T16 maps, right? Before to get to T16 maps, you had to kill conquerors and stuff. Now you can just go in a straight line. You get to T16s without doing anything. You don't need to do like a quest line and everything. And the only thing I don't like is that you're forced to, like, if they gave us the opportunity to sextant, even if we don't have the stones, it would be perfect for me. But now we can't sextant unless you have the stones. So you're kind of forced. If you want to Zeus hard, you're forced to kill the bosses.
Those are not easy bosses either. You can't really do Maven unless you have a boss killer of some form or a carry. Uber Elder maybe you can get away with, and we don't know about the new two, but yeah, those are definitely some steep hurdles, and especially for SSF and stuff like that. I imagine most players won't be acquiring most of these Voidstones by themselves. Are you kind of happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to seem like an asshole, but I think it's good. I think any sort of form of you have to do something difficult to progress, I think is good for a video game.
Fair enough.
And especially if I was in SSF, I would be really excited to go through that for the first time. It's like, okay, so now I have to think about, potentially completing the Atlas and then getting to a point where maybe I have to make a bossing character, or maybe I have to start with a character that can do bosses to then do these bosses for the first time and then learn the mechanics. And since you don't like, the problem that I had with Elder and Uber Elder and stuff is that like accessing them is RNG, right? Like you have to drop the maps or you have to find them in Zana. But for the bosses that are on there, like Maven and that sort of stuff, you just do it by mapping. Right? So even if you fail, like whatever, you just keep mapping. You map more, and then you eventually get the fragments to be able to do Maven again, or eventually you proc the new bosses again. So I think it's a good progression system, better than what we had before. Because I really didn't like completing the invitations myself. I thought that was bad. Because that for me was just sit in hideout, trade for all these things, and then do it all at once.
I do think though that with the power increase to sextants, which we're going to talk more about in a second here, there will it's going to create a scenario of people who do have the void stones being a tremendous economic advantage over those people who do not. It's basically mandatory to acquire these once you're in the end game to kind of get that edge on, mapping. Like we saw a sextant which just said all breaches are Chayula. That is ridiculous. And then now you have the ability to store all sextants you roll for later use using the new Kirac item. This essentially turns sextants into an absolute powerhouse that can be sold, bought, stored, and used at the perfect time. And we've also seen, obviously, with the power increase, it's completely absurd. And not having access to using 4 of these sextants when it seems they can stack so multiplicatively together, like, for example, getting 3 breaches, and then Chayula, and then God knows what else. Is that kind of going to be a bit of a problem? It's kind of almost like you got the void zones and you're rich, or void stones, or you don't,
I think since everyone has access to the actual tree just by completing maps, you get a lot of power that you wouldn't otherwise have before.
Yeah.
Before, like, a lot of the power came from doing invitations, like all of the power came from doing invitations and having the Voidstones. Most people didn't even bother rolling Voidstones. Now we have it in the tree, so everyone has it.
The juice is actually way more baseline, yeah.
Yeah, there's like a way higher baseline juice, I think.
Like so I do get it. Like you miss out on the sextants, yeah. But the thing is, if you're looking at it from a trade league perspective, if you're a player that already has access to T16s, already has the Alice passive tree, there's so many people that offer services to kill those bosses for you if you feel like you're missing out. But if you want to go down the route of learning them yourself and doing them, you can do that too, right? So if you feel bad that someone else was able to do them on his own and you can't, that's just weird, right? Because what you could do is you could farm the currency and pay someone to do it if you really feel so bad, or you could take the time to learn it like that person who has an advantage over you, right? And if you're an SSF, the way that you should look at it is you should be excited because that is longer engaged. Like it's an extra challenge, and it's you get to play the game longer and feel like you're challenging yourself for longer, which is what we want. Like we want to play games for as long as possible. I'm pretty sure everyone wants that. Nobody wants to be like, oh, I'm gonna buy the new God of War and be done with it in like 3 hours. No, like it's good to have these long-winded challenges to do. Basically, like I don't know. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think it's more than fair anyway, because one thing we haven't talked about is that the Awakener bonus is finally gone. You don't have to complete your Atlas twice anymore. Thank God. And it's obviously been, instead, all of the power of that has been funneled into the new Atlas passive system, which we'll talk about in a second here. But one thing I do want to talk about here, which is kind of a bit of a throwback for me and you, Tuna, is the new favorite system and how it synergizes with the ability to raise all those maps up to T16 with those Voidstones. Overall, it's pretty well established that you should get 1 to 2 T16s if your whole Atlas is T16 due to the fact of the way map equity works. So you're basically going to be able to infinitely sustain any map of your choice now if we have anything to go off from what Chris Wilson said. What do you guys think of that? Because in the podcast we did with Chris, he said that he was pretty damn against that, but now we have it.
Hopefully Rory talked him out of it. I don't know if it's Rory, but I don't know. I'm really excited about that for sure. I mean, if it's as you said, 50% of all maps are the map that you favorited, then pretty good.
That's infinite.
Yeah, if you have a 50-50, it's pretty much infinite. You can just use 1 card to Scarab, or even juice your map with a lot of quantity, like corrupt it with 8 mods, and you're gonna sustain for sure.
I mean, if we take into account influence, the new influence kind of power creep with the mobs, especially because they increase as you do more, I don't even know if you'll need to use that, Ellie.
I don't even think you need to chisel.
Yeah,
with the Atlas passive trees as well. Like, let's be honest.
And in addition to that, we also do see on the Atlas passive tree ones for maps, like passives for maps. And then we also saw that the small travel nodes, some of them actually just give you maps as well. So I think it's not going to be too much of an issue to sustain your favorite map and go infinite on it and run it as much as you want.
Yep.
Finally, which is pretty interesting. And that synergizes pretty damn well with what we're going to talk about next, which is the Atlas passive tree. Oh, you go ahead, Ellie.
I wanted to say that since they're removing all of the good maps, I don't think we're gonna want to favorite maps anyway.
What? I mean, they're bringing back Burial Chamber. Dunes is still around.
Yeah, I was joking because they nerfed Tropical Island for Tuna.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you have to find a new Delhi map, Tuna.
But there's another. There's Jungle Valley. It's fine.
Buying Delhi maps is gonna be pretty easy though. That's the upside.
I can still stay in the jungle.
Yeah, there's gonna be some maps.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Atlas passive tree, shall we? So one of the most annoying things, at least for me, is having my favorite lead mechanic be on an area which doesn't have my favorite map, and then basically crying because I can't do Legion on Dunes anymore. That is no longer a problem. You can pick whatever league mechanic you want and specialize into it from the start of the league. And also you can go even harder at it than you could on the previous Atlas due to the fact that there's just more nodes available. Seemingly, you're basically going to be able to get as much of your favorite league as you want and run multiple of them at the same time on any map you want infinitely. What do you guys think of this?
Right. It's what we always wanted, right?
Yeah.
Just get all the juice on the one map that we want and just do it forever.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, it's just great. Like the being able to play the maps that you like is obviously what we like in Trade League, so in softcore as well. So we're sort of the players that just play, that just keep playing and playing and playing regardless of anything. So for us, it's like, yeah, good stuff.
I do think it's interesting though. There is a lot to break down. So first of all, there's 600 passives on this passive tree. That's a lot of passives. And you get 132 skill points to play around with in total after you fully complete everything. That's like a lot of decisions to be made. I'm expecting you'll be able to fully spec into 3 or 4 leagues. And the way they interact is probably going to be pretty damn interesting. Let me just actually didn't check. Is there Beyond at all on here? I'm pretty sure there is.
There is.
So, you can spec into Beyond, Harbinger, Abyss, and then Legion. All of them, full power. And, who even knows what that's going to cause? I have no idea. This is pretty interesting. There's now going to be this concept of Atlas builds. What do you guys think of this concept? There's like a damn skill tree for it now.
Great. It's so good.
It's crazy.
I think the question remains, though, is what kind of a metagame forms around an Atlas build? So if, for example, your favorite streamer, Crouching Tuna, is running a ritual Atlas build and, 1,000 fellow fish suddenly decide to copy his build and, the economy adjusts, what happens to that build? How does it all play and mesh together? Well, what do you guys reckon?
I think the currency that we need to use they're making orbs, right? To respec. They're probably going to be kind of expensive. Or maybe if they're really common,
hopefully they're really common.
Like regrets. Also, they nerfed NEM3, so small currencies are in a bad spot, I think.
They didn't nerf it.
They never meant to say they removed it, yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
We might have some problems with the orbs of making, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty big deal because at the same time, this is an Atlas tree which is locked to your account. So let's say you've got a bosser and you've got a mapper, and you've got 30 Cirrus sets, and you're not spec'ing a Cirrus. Shit! Time to respec my whole tree, right? Pretty much, because some of these things are nowhere near each other. If you want to run Harvest and then you also want to run bosses, they're on like opposite ends of the Atlas tree, so it's kind of pretty crazy. No, you're gonna maybe even have to run into a situation where you might even need multiple accounts. What do you guys reckon?
Oh no,
there's no way. Like, the thing is, I think the way they designed this was sort of intended for more of a playstyle of allocating your like almost like scheduling, if that makes sense. Especially now that you can like keep the bosses and not run them.
And you
It's
can sell them, I suppose.
yeah, or like again, like I think SSF is a really pure way to play the game because you don't take into account the whole FOMO situation of like, oh, I'm losing out on not doing this. But the way that you can do it, that you do it in SSF is you just spam maps for a week and you stack up all your guardians and then you respec into that and then you run those, right? And it's no different to how we had it now, right? But the difference is hopefully that now an orb of making is like 15 chaos and hopefully later it's 1 or something, right?
Yeah, well, let's hope that's the case because obviously the economy changes pretty drastically. Some streamers have a lot of influence, and you wouldn't want to be put out by the fact that suddenly cellular breachstones are worth half the amount because there was a video put out or something like that. That would definitely suck. And another example of this is, for example, we were talking about the two different bosses, the Eater of Worlds and the whatever the other guy's called. Those guys are actually on both the left and right side. Like they're not close to each other at all. So you're going to want to spec into one or the other.
Yeah.
And I imagine the bonuses are probably not going to be negligible. So you'll be farming one or the other. And you'll want to spec into that. So there's just, there is, I have no idea how this is going to play out. It's very interesting. It's very exciting, but it could also be very frustrating, I imagine. Especially if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of currency to throw around to respec this thing.
I have a way to solve both those issues. And it's pretty elegant and pretty smooth. What you can do, right? Listen, is you can just keep watching your favorite streamers Tuna and Elesshar and your favorite YouTuber Grim, and then you stay ahead of the meta because you're getting the strats on day one. You do that for a couple of days, then it's bad, but by then Grim will have a new video, or Tuna will be onto the next farming strat, or Elesshar will be onto the next farming strat. So make sure you subscribe to Grimro's YouTube video, Elesshar's YouTube channel, and obviously follow my.
I have another idea as well. You can counter the flavor of the month stuff by just running a strategy that doesn't really rely on the market price too much. For example, if you do expedition, a lot of the currency, like if you run expeditions, a lot of the value you get it raw from the NPCs, right? So you just talk to the NPCs and they give you money back. Like they give you currency to gen, and they give you logbooks the week you can run and get raw currency back. So if you run a strategy that gives you raw currency, you can't really run in a situation where you don't make profit, right?
Like expedition or yeah, but that's most of the good strategies anyways. I don't think this is going to be too much of an issue unless you go into hyper specific things that everyone is doing. Like you can make, I think the way that I'm looking at this tree is you can make profit by basically doing anything you want. Like everything is good. Even Rogue Exiles. Rogue Exiles are like, they're really good like early on, and you just think to yourself like, oh, they drop uniques, that could be good early, or they drop a lot of jewelry that could be good for chaos recipe early. But you're not gonna be like 2 months into the league doing Rogue Exiles because then you just have a fundamental, like you're just not thinking Path of Exile, right? And you're not thinking Trade League.
Yeah, I think it's the FOMO, which I'm scared of most. It's like, I got this six synth map. Oh, I'd totally love to run it. Shit, don't have the Atlas passives. Time to buy some respecs and get the synth wheel. That was a problem already, so maybe it's not going to be that bad, but you know, it is what it is. But I think overall it's a very positive change, and I'm very excited to try and tackle this behemoth and see what we can kind of come up with, because it is definitely quite the behemoth.
The thing about Trade League, yeah, go on, Eddie.
I wanted to say, also, if you think about it, they did a lot of changes, for example, to breaches. Let's say you want to run breachstones, right? I mean, you want to farm breachstones. You can just run them, and at the end, you drop a lot of scarabs and stuff. And you can also do invitation with them. Like, if you spec into dropping a lot of breachstones, for example, just farming a lot of breachstones in the map, if they're not worth a lot, you can just run them yourself and make a lot of money from that. There's a lot of value from just running them. You don't always have to sell them.
But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true.
This applies to like what's the name of the league? Blight?
But that's only because Blight, you don't have the Alice passives,
Blighted
right?
maps if you want. They always drop raw currency, right?
Yeah, but like for example, you can't run synth maps if you don't have the synth passives currently.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to run Cirrus sets unless you had the Cirrus passive and stuff like
Right.
that.
Well, what I
Yeah,
think
you're gonna sell
is
those.
like it's there's no way to solve this because this is like this is a psychology issue, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, what you could do is you could just be like, oh, forehead, just sell it and then buy it when you have the passives, right? You're technically just renting content in that regard.
Yeah.
But it's like people will still
Yeah.
feel bad because they're like, but I want to run it now. Like I got this shiny new thing. So it's more of a psychology issue more than anything, I think.
I think that the thing that really kind of throws me on this, like the respecking thing, is like it's like the passive tree, right? Like, let's say you're playing a witch and you path all the way over to like Templar, and then you decide you want to go all the way over to Shadow. That's like, oh man, the respec at all, man. You know what I mean? Like that's it's a little bit yikes, but overall, I think it's probably fine. Pretty exciting. It seems like there's a lot of fresh stuff. Like, I mean, they said like one of them was that there's like a chance for a new strongbox to drop scarabs. That already sounds insane. I'm already going to try strongboxes because of that. That's going to be cracked with monstrous treasure. You know, who knows what else they're going to have on there? Maybe there's going to be some even more spicy stuff than that.
I think this is the best thing ever. It's a modular system too. Think about it. Like you could eventually have like they could add even just like on the tree, like we currently have like 3 passive jewel sockets that modify passives in a specific area. Or even clusters, yeah, which bring like the synthesis tree to the right side instead of the top left, like things like that, right?
I think it's really exciting. It's one hell of an addition, and I can't wait to see what people do with it.
Yep.
It's going to be very min-maxable as well, as I think. I'm pretty excited.
I think it's not going to be too much of a problem because you probably have way more than enough points that you can spec in multiple different strategies, right? 117 is a lot of points, right? Points.
It's 132.
Okay, 132. Yeah, you can probably spec into like multiple different trees and change your strategy based on the market prices, right? And even if one strategy is completely like ruined and no one does it anymore, you're not gonna have to respect the whole tree. It's probably gonna be like 20, 30 points maximum, right?
But pathing matters.
So, yeah, there's the pathing to consider, and then also each league has about 4 wheels. So like there's 4 blight wheels, for example. If you're doing blight, probably gonna want all 4 wheels. And then like respecting all 4 of those wheels and pathing to go for another 4. You know, there could be some issues with it. Overall, I think it's probably fine. Like, I don't think it's gonna be an issue, especially if you just pick what you like and pick what you want to play anyway. Doesn't really matter. Like, I wouldn't get too much caught up in the profit per hour if you're having fun, especially if that's like bossing, for example, because that's always gonna be good. All right, shall we continue? Okay, so this one's kind of a little bit weird. I was kind of like, huh, when they announced it, and that is the Kirac rework, kind of turning him almost into like an expedition vendor or something like that. He's got like special missions now, which kind of operate a little bit as a Zana shop, but also a Zana mission, and you can get reroll tokens, which give you specific things in his shop. What do you guys think of this? It's kind of like random, in my opinion.
As long as it's affected by sextants, it's good.
Yeah, that was my same take. As long as you can use sextants and it takes into account the Atlas passives, I'm fine with it. That was my only take. It's basically like a guaranteed 1 league mechanic, right? You just see in the shop what it gives you, right?
Yeah.
You just select the map that you want, and you're like, oh, I got a breach this map. Oh, I got a whatever this map. Also, have you seen there's like some new items that guarantee something?
Like the reroll currencies, right? It's
yeah,
like
you go ahead. You say it.
No, you go ahead. I mean, that's it, right? They're like a piece of paper, which is like reroll.
Yeah, but it guarantees 1 map, like 1 mod. Like breach. It's like underworldly or whatever. It gives like a breach, right? Otherworldly, it gives like a guaranteed breach.
A breach mission, yeah. In one of the maps, yeah.
Or a conqueror, or whatever. Or breachstone. I think breachstone was one of them as well. It's kind of weird.
It'd just be really sick if the Atlas passives apply, because that's the problem with Zana right now, right? You remember Zana used to be so profitable before Atlas passives.
I mean, she was pretty good to fish for harvest as well, but yeah, I know what you mean. She used to be crazy.
But the current state of Zana was actually sad. Like, Tuna was me and Tuna were starting a map with Zana just to refresh her shop so that we could buy the mod refresh. The mod from Zana that gives you the quantity equals rarity, so we could magic find maps. Remember, Tuna, when you did that?
Yeah, that's like literally
Yeah,
all it
that
is.
is so bad. I had like 500 Zana missions. That was the only use we could find for Zana.
Oh god.
Magic
Yeah, I mean,
finding even harder.
I think that Kirac's probably gonna find his feet, and he probably is gonna be pretty damn good. And I'm definitely gonna be messing around with him a little bit, especially in the early game. He looks like he could be quite useful. Like one of the reroll things was all the maps that he sells are ones you haven't completed yet. That's pretty damn insane. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking those up on trade and trying to pick a few of those up for sure. All right. Any closing thoughts on the Siege of the Atlas editions? Because that pretty much sums it up. We've obviously got our new bosses, we got our new crafting, we got our new Atlas mechanic. We're going to talk about the league, the actual league that we're getting in a second here. But what do you guys think overall, Siege of the Atlas thoughts?
Okay, the expansion looks amazing to me. The league itself is kind of underwhelming.
League not yet. League not yet. Just the expansion.
You go ahead.
What's your favorite part?
Okay, my favorite part, the new crafting, the early to mid crafting, the new items that you can like probably use to meta craft and stuff. I think they're crazy. They're really good. Like some early crafting power spike, I would say. What about you, Tuna?
I mean, obviously,
what do you like about the league? Not the league, the expansion.
Non-region Alice passives, and then the new influence boys, and then being able to. That's like more than one thing, isn't it? I already went over my quota.
Oh, that's okay. I mean,
Just
fair to say, it's not about it all.
And then being able to bottle your bosses up for later or to sell them. I mean,
yeah, that's so good as well. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
What's not to like? It's really good.
A lot of quality of life changes.
Yeah. There's a channel this whole time. I've just been looking at the thing. I've just been staring at it. It's so good.
I think I just nailed it all, honestly. I'm really excited to actually play with the influence actual like mapping experience without absolutely hating myself and getting one shot by Baran mobs. And I really like the idea of the stones or whatever that you can get in there, which juice your map up or give you some extra rewards that you have to click on. It's kind of like almost like domination, but you actually get rewards this time. It's like badass. But yeah, fair to say, expansion. I'd probably rate it for just from like the initial impression, the best I've seen yet. Probably takes the throne from Echoes for me. What do you reckon, Tuna?
Definitely. I thought Echoes was good, but this is a whole other level. Like Echoes was good, but it's sort of like at the time it felt good, but when you now compare it to this, you felt like I bet you like we're gonna play like this for a while. And we're gonna, well, at least I'm probably gonna feel like how did we play back then kind of feeling. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, like Echoes, everyone's like, oh, back in Echoes, it was so good. This is that all over again. And Blade Vortex got buffed as well, so just putting that out there. So it's like, let's go again. Yeah, fair to say it's gonna be an absolute banger, I would say.
The best thing, also another like super great thing, is the micromanagement. You don't have to micro as much anymore. I don't know. Okay, if you guys watched Tuna stream last league, when we were doing 6-man magic finding, we had to buy Watstone with a specific mod on them and mix and match them to have the perfect 4 Watstone with the perfect 4 mods. Sextants. It was great. It was so bad, and then we have to like roll the map, slam it to 6 mod. It's so much work. Now you can just buy the sextants in bulk and just put them in. It's so much better. Like, and you have all your passives in your tree instead of having to mix and match all the Watstones.
Good stuff.
I mean, there's not really any friction at all really left, is there? Like, you don't really have to worry about the conquerors. You don't have to go into their map and then out. You just do your own maps. You get your mini boss in there. Don't want to do the mini boss? Sell the key. Don't want to do the big boss? Sell the key. Get all the conqueror maps. Sell those if you don't want them. You know, oh my god, it's literally perfect.
We'll have to see.
Yep.
Well, yeah, okay. Let's temporarily fix it. I can't get too hyped.
I'm trying to
It's
curb.
looking good though.
Yeah, it's looking really nice for sure.
Unless your name's Void Fletcher. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk a little bit about Archnemesis. So Archnemesis, Chris pitched it as a nice, simple, fun league to go along with, Siege of the Atlas. However, he then told us that there are 35 recipes that you can create with 4 different reagents, and the reagents have 5 tiers, and you can overlap them in a deck building game where you convert them all and get a share of currency. So I was quite overwhelmed by that, but I could see where they were kind of going. It seems like a bit of a mix of, talisman, metamorph, and like a few other things as well. What was your first impression of Archnemesis?
My first impression is, why aren't you using the loot
Underwhelming.
filter? It's
True.
like me just seeing all those loot tiles. I can't get excited. I don't know why. I just saw the loot tiles and I was like, what am I looking at? I couldn't even tell what was what. And then, so I just stopped looking at the loot. But I like the system of combining the mobs and stuff. I feel like the cool thing about it is like it's metamorph. If it was done properly. That's what it felt to me like. But one thing that was disappointing for me is that for endgame perspective, like you're not really gonna be able to steal auras from the guy, so it's sort of just gonna be like a pause to your map. And I really hope it pauses my delirium fog. That's all.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of a weird mechanic. I think you will be able to steal the mods, given what Chris said. He very swiftly corrected the dev team on that one. So I think, but even so, you're probably only going to have one monster to steal anyway, right? Which isn't, it's not
Yeah, but
good.
it has like 8 auras and you can stack them, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it has
is
a
it-
lot of mods
Okay.
because you keep stacking all the modifiers from the items, right?
Yeah. I think that this league is probably the closest thing it is in terms of like kind of like loot structure, as well as kind of how it's going to play out is probably ritual, right? There's like a few different locations. You go around the map, you kind of do a little bit of careful planning, and then you get a bunch of rewards, and there's a little bit of a meta game associated with it. But the difference between this and ritual is that in the common theme of like something like an ultimatum, it doesn't actually offer anything other than raw currency. It's not giving you any uniques, no new crafting materials. It's just like the same stuff that we have from every other league mechanic.
But it does give you like
True.
anything you select, right?
Yeah, but it's like Metamorph, how it had the catalysts,
Yeah.
and then
That's
like
true.
Delve
That's
has
true.
fossils, and Ritual has the bases. This one doesn't really have anything which is its own. So it's basically its entire worth is gonna be, is it better than X or is it better than Y? If no, ignore it. If yes, oh my god, it's OP. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's fine for a league to piggyback off of other leagues, right? It probably has like daily rewards. It probably has like kind of like when you do ice, right? There's like chests with different type of rewards. You probably have different types of rewards as well there, right? So
Yeah.
I don't really like that person. But
okay.
like I would rather it just has like uniques and currency and stuff, and like at
But
the end of the day I think like they knew that we would also feel like it doesn't matter because of the expansion.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think the point that Grim's making, like, I mean, I don't know, but if every league had like their own currency, their own new items, there's gonna be so much bloat to the game. For every single league, there's like so many items coming out, and every league has their specific items. There will be a lot of bloat, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it's fine for a league to have like rewards from other leagues as well, or like, yeah, just give some
yeah,
currency.
yeah, fair enough. I think it's probably going to be pretty powerful, I would say, if you line up all the recipes correctly and you combine everything in such a way and you make sure it all overlaps. I imagine for your like kind of like early on experience, it's probably going to be on the level of or exceeding essence farming, that kind of a level. But when you get into the heavy hitting, like delirium and all sorts of stuff like that, it's probably just going to get absolutely obliterated. And I imagine speed mapping with the new influences and all sorts of stuff like that will probably be a little bit more profitable than that as well. But I think it's probably going to be a pretty good stopgap, and I'm sure there's a lot of cool things that you might be able to do with it. But it doesn't seem like there's any like really big sticking points in terms of like, oh, you can only get this here, so therefore it's really worth doing kind of thing. That's what I
We
was
don't
Yeah.
know
saying.
yet though, right? Like we didn't
Yeah,
know
we don't-
about Hateforge before the league went live, for example.
True.
I don't think there's
There's
any
a lot of
unique.
new uniques that they. There's a lot of new uniques that they announced, right? We didn't
So
see all of them.
there's 4 uniques for each of the mini bosses, from what I understand, or they share 4 uniques, and the rest of the uniques are all from the new endgame bosses. From what I
There could be
understand.
some like crazy combination that spawns a boss or something.
I think
Kind
they
of
said
like
it's just
Ultimatum.
14,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that
Hmm.
I think
There
the
could also
reward
be-
level. Sorry.
No, go.
I think the reward level is gonna be similar to Ultimatum as well, where you just go in, you run, and you just get your currency or like your few items, and then go next.
Yeah.
From like what we saw, that it converts all the, you can convert the reward into something else. It feels like kind of Ultimatum. The amount of reward at the end of one map, it kind of feels like that.
It does also look a lot faster than Ultimatum, and it looks a lot faster
Yeah.
than something like Expedition. So maybe it's just like super efficient. Like you pick up your 2 items, and then you go on a session where you just blast them, you combine all your recipes, and then you get an insane run, and you just get like 4x worth of stuff. And then, that's all good, that was fun, and then you save up another tab.
You can filter them too, so.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it could be interesting, but I don't think it's the main draw of the league. But I do think it's probably going to be something which will be pretty appealing and pretty powerful for players. Like if someone's expecting to do the chaos recipe, I think they should probably just run Archnemesis instead. Would you agree with that?
Definitely.
Mm.
One thing that we haven't talked about is the new Headhunter buffs. You can cap your chaos res, your fizz mitigation, your everything now, right?
Yeah, you certainly can.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
And there's beyond.
Not that you really needed it, but still, chaos res is really good. Like if your build wasn't capped.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Also-
Caspi too.
This is extra lightning as well, which is pretty interesting, especially if you're running Call of the Brotherhood, which could be pretty good. I think one thing that I do want to talk a little bit about is what you think the metagame is going to look like. So lots of people have been asking, like, okay, all this new content's out. We've seen the patch notes. What should I league start? And I'll throw myself out there first. I am actually probably still going to league start a mapper. I wanted to league start a mapper after I saw the passive tree. I'm like, God damn, just get me into that stuff. And after seeing the influence stuff and kind of, understanding, how powerful that's going to be to do quickly, I think a mapper which can do the like kind of serious Awaken or 8 level kind of content is probably a pretty damn good pick. And there's only one pick for that, and that is probably Corrupting Fever, maybe with some new text from the new influence types. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in, but I fully acknowledge that a very effective bosser could certainly be the play, especially with Maven dropping Awakened gems, the new orb, the new two new bosses being rollable, purchasable, Cirrus dropping Maven orbs and Awakener orbs, and all sorts of stuff like that going on. So what are you guys going? Bosser, mapper, and what kind of a build?
I'm gonna play hybrid. I've been practicing for the last 20 days. I wanted to find a build that did both really well, but my primary focus was making a good mapper, and I wanted to play Ignite Prolif. I really like Ignite scaling, so I made a little Ignite Proliferation Elementalist, and it's really good. It's super tanky. It does a lot of damage too on very low investment. So,
what skill?
Explosive Arrow Elementalist. Yeah, on ballistas. So, yeah, I mean, I played an SSF for about 20 days. It was really easy to do like all the content on that. I went through like a few iterations of it though, and then in the last iteration, it ended up being very good. Also, Palstron helped me a bunch with that, so thanks Palstron. And yeah, I'm really excited to be playing that in the new league, and I think it's gonna be a pretty popular build too. So, the more people play a build, the more people are trying to craft for it. So eventually, it creates like a big market, and it's easier to access because of that.
Certainly.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good one to start for me, and I think it's gonna be able to do all the bosses as well. I mean, I tested like in league, like with minimal gear, what we would consider less than a week 1 character doing like Maven and the Feared and stuff, and I had no problem. So the only problem was me, actually.
What about you, Ellie? The traditional go-to for you is generally brands or miners, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, I usually start brands or miners. But I think this league, Jacob wants to play with me and he wants to support me. So in theory, I'm probably gonna play an Inquisitor and I'm gonna go cold to lightning to cold conversion. I'll probably play either Stormbrand, Spark, or like the basic carries that go really well with a support. Or probably I kind of wanted to play maybe Stormcall. They buffed a lot of like Stormcall clear and damage is actually kind of good if you get less duration, or also it synergizes well with what's the name, the Orb of Storms. I mean the new Orb of Storms. You can run double 6-link if you go with a staff maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what I'm going yet, because I usually don't practice at all. I just don't like practicing before league start. I just do 1 or 2 runs just to like get around 4 hours and a half to maps and be done with it. And yeah, I'll probably just run some generic auras and the support is gonna run like the main damage auras. And if the support stops playing with me or like we split or something, I'll just put the damage auras on me and be done. Like the character should be able to do everything by itself as well, even without support.
So what content are you thinking of running on that one? Is it maps or is it going to be bosses?
We wanted to run invitations for money early and then respect. Okay, how Jacob plays usually, he just rushes like one content and he just farms it and then just goes into crafting. So we would just want to make a lot of money early, just doing one content really fast and then just make another build or crafting or something else.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. All right. Any closing thoughts here, guys? Obviously, massive shakeup. We have like a lot of unknowns to tackle and obviously a lot of things to figure out.
I'm really excited to be playing Lost Ark on the. I'm just kidding, dude. I'm so fucking hyped. I'm so hyped to play this expansion, dude. It's so
definitely
good.
looks like one you wouldn't want to miss.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
if Echoes is anything to go by, they're gonna probably nerf a bunch of stuff that is way too strong in this expansion. But gotta enjoy it while it
Enjoy
lasts.
it while it lasts, dude. Yep. I do like with the Alice passive having like 600 passives. Maybe there's a lot of passives that we don't know about, and like there's bound to be some like broken stuff
Oh, absolutely.
that like
I mean,
someone finds out, that then we get through word of mouth, that one person tries, and then it's like, it's like that's why I love this game, like stuff like that.
you combine that with the fact that we're getting the new sextet modifiers. It's like, something's
Yeah.
gonna break.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but it'll.
I really hope something breaks, and I really hope as well. Like I don't know if there's any like GG devs ever listening to this, but I really hope that like if someone does find something broken and ends up stepping out of the circle, you better not ban, because we're just players and we're just trying to have fun. Like how do we know whether something is an exploit or not? Like when like generally it's you wouldn't think stepping out of a circle is an exploit. Like honestly, retroactively you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of bad. Like but hindsight is 2020, right? So I think with these passive, there's a lot of potential for this sort of stuff to happen. So
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with how all the lead mechanics will combine together.
yeah,
It's gonna be crazy. Gonna be lots of stuff to try. Anyway, we've got 1 week left and a whole lot of things to prepare. I think everyone's probably going to be scrambling to get things sorted. What can we expect in terms of content from yourself, Elesshar? Are we Twitch streaming? Are we YouTube videoing?
I'll definitely stream starting from League Star for sure, and I'll try to do as many YouTube videos as possible. I don't guarantee YouTube videos though. I'll try to make them once in a while, but I don't guarantee many.
What about you, Tuna? Can we expect an explosive arrow guide before League start?
yeah, I'll work on it. Like I pretty much have all the footage of it already recorded. I just have to actually do the text, like the voiceover and stuff, explain the build and whatnot. So probably in the next day or two, I'll upload that.
Perfect.
Sure.
Sounds good. Definitely check it out if you're interested in the old explosive arrow. And we'll probably just have the business as usual from the Grim, but lots of stuff to cover. And we'll probably just wrap it up there, boys. Thank you so much for the time. And hopefully you guys watching enjoyed the Blastcast.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.